What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is truly a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that here in Las Vegas is just three of the most elite fantasy football minds you could ever possibly have here. So, Charles McDonald, what's going on, buddy?
If you want to lose money, listen very, very carefully today.
In addition to Charles McDonald somehow crashing this podcast, we also have two favorites, two of our good friends, Scott Pianowski, Justin Boone. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
It's great to be here, although I'm losing about $100 an hour with my inability to play poker talking to you guys. But hey, for the greater fantasy good, I'm happy to do it.
What a man of the people. Boone, what's going on, buddy?
Just excited to continue to meet Yahoo folks in person. Over the last couple of weeks, I've pretty much gotten to meet everybody, and we're keeping it going. Exciting time of year, and excited to be here.
You'll get over it soon.
Yeah. The shine wears off soon enough. After probably what, Charles?
A day.
15, 20 Harmon shows like that's where it gets pretty awful.
If Boone isn't sick of us by the end of the weekend, we've done something.
Yeah. No question about that. Well, hey, you guys are not sick of us. You out there listening, watching, you're not sick of the great stuff here at Yahoo, because not only is it a special week at Yahoo because we are all here today together in Las Vegas at the Venetian, we're also here for the Yahoo Fantasy Marathon, and you can now watch this show, the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, on the Yahoo Sports Network, our first ever streaming TV channel. Yahoo Sports Network is available to stream on the leading fast, free, ad-supported television services. It's also streaming live 24/7 on yahoosports.tv, where you can catch all the shows on your phone or your browser. So make sure you just have that up all the time so you can just constantly see your bank account going down as you're listening to Charles McDonald's fantasy football advice. On to the matter at hand today. Since we're here in Vegas, we thought no better topic than identifying the 12 riskiest players that we think are actually worth gambling on this year in fantasy. We each have three players to talk through today. So, Boone, I'm going to throw this to you first. Who is your risky player that you think people should bet on this year?
I'm going with a guy who, this is probably the player that I get the most comments about in my rankings, that I have him too high. Why aren't you worried about the injuries? It's Kenneth Walker on the Seahawks. And I get it. The durability concerns, they're huge, right? Last year, missed 6 games, has never played a full season since he entered the league, right? But it was 15 games the first year, 15 games the second year, and then 11 games last year. So last year was really the only bad one. I think, too, for fantasy, people see Zach Charbonnet step in there and have such success in that offense. And I think we all would love to see Zach Charbonnet as a starter on a team. Ideally, that would be somewhere other than Seattle, so we could get 2 separate fantasy starters out of these guys. But there's been a lot of talk that with this offense looking really good in the preseason, with what Charbonnet's done over the last few years, could he potentially carve out a bigger role? Could at some point maybe he just usurp Walker altogether? I don't think that's what's happening here. And, you know, in the last few weeks, we saw the coaching staff come out and I would say kind of challenge Walker in the media, right? Like they were talking up Charbonnet that, man, this guy is so professional and he's always on point and he takes care of everything. And they straight up said that Walker needs to get back out there and string some practices together. And he's been dealing with this foot injury this preseason. It was like touch and go. It was like on and off. He'd practice for a day or two and then he'd take some time off. They said they were just managing him. Well, after those comments came out in the media from the coaching staff, guess who came right back to practice this week? Guess who practiced in full all week and was out there in the scrimmage game against the Packers this week? And according to the beat writers, was lighting it up, was bouncing off defenders, was looking like the Kenneth Walker that we know and love, and the player that I think he could be this year in that Clint Kubiak system. Man, Harmon, we talked about this last week on the show after week 2 of the preseason. That run game especially looks great. You get like a little bit of like the Shanahan, McVay touches in there from Kubiak, but the offensive line just playing so physical and dominating, just huge holes that these guys are running through. And it wasn't just Charbonnet, it was Holani, it was Damian Martinez, the rookie.
All down the damn depth chart.
Everybody was getting it done. So why can't Kenneth Walker, if he comes back healthy, which right now it seems like he is, and this is a guy that last year, despite the fact that he missed some time, was the RB12 in fantasy points per game. So we know he's proven he can be an RB1 in fantasy for us. You can get him in the 4th round. I mean, in some of the builds that I'm doing, I end up with him as my RB1 because I'm happy to go with a receiver, maybe 2 receivers. You go elite QB, elite tight end perhaps, and then you come around and you get Walker there. I think the ceiling is huge. They have the 7th easiest fantasy schedule among running backs in my strength of schedule matrix. That's another notch in his favor. Somebody in this backfield is going to have a great season. I think it's going to be Kenneth Walker.
Listen, I'm going to throw this to you, Scott, because I know there's a little bit of disagreement here, and I think I'm kind of in the middle somewhere on Kenneth Walker. I really like him as a 4th-round pick, but again, I know, Scott, you're more so just leaning into Zach Charbonnet. So how do you feel about Walker?
Yeah, I am a Charbonnet guy, and I know, Justin has been a rankings god over at Fantasy Pros like the last 10 or 15 years.
A god? No, you guys got to
You guys got to stop with this.
I know Justin's sick of us saying that, but look, you're good at what you do, and I respect that. And when I disagree with Justin Boone, I think I need to reevaluate my position. But what makes me nervous is Charbonnet's efficiency was better in a lot of the key metrics last year. More touchdowns, fewer touches. You mentioned the Kubiak running system, which we like that. I think whoever is the hot hand in September could be their featured guy. I think Walker's going to get the first crack at it, but I feel like Charbonnet has double-digit touches in his pocket to start the season. So everything you said positive about Walker, I think a lot of it applies to Charbonnet, obviously at a cheaper ADP. So I've been finding you don't want to draft both of them. That's to me is a sucker play, right? This idea, I'll get both of them. I'll get the right back.
Coward move.
I think you hit the fork in the road. You take a left or a right.
You want his handcuff? No.
Yeah, we're not doing that. I want you to play for the big inning in the summer months, and we'll worry about insurance later in the season. It makes sense around Halloween. To me, Zach Charbonnet is the more appealing guy, and it's cheaper. Look, he's cheaper ADP. That's kind of a cop out of maybe your bang for your buck is a little bit better. But I just don't know. And you guys have obviously access to a lot of stats. You do a bunch of film study. I'm not convinced Kenneth Walker is demonstrably better than Zach Charbonnet. So I think this September is going to be kind of like a tryout, and who gets in the good favor of Clint Kubiak first.
I think that last part is dead on, because I think you can make a case for both of them, especially in a world where Seahawks spent a 1st-round pick on Gray Zabel, offensive line from North Dakota State. He was freaking awesome this preseason.
Nate Tice tweeting out a damn highlight reel of a left guard in the preseason.
So
what world do we live in?
It was crazy. I mean, he was out there killing the Chiefs. But that is a big enough upgrade where both of them will have improved opportunities. And I think you can make a case for both. Kenneth, to me, is probably more boom or bust. If he can hit a crease, he's got the big playability that I don't think Charbonnet can do it unless they're playing a team like the Cardinals last year where they were just stomping all over them, the game they played in Arizona. But Zach's probably more consistent down to down. You might not see the big 40, 50-yard runs that come every once in a while, but if you can count on him to get 4 to 6, that's something that a lot of coaches value, and he'll eventually get a lot of touches. So I think probably Kenneth Walker probably gets his first crack, but even if he remains a starter, I would imagine they both get a ton of touches throughout the season. Maybe to a point where it's not really fantasy viable for either one.
This is an offense to get right because new coordinator, new quarterback, the receiver room has been totally revamped, right? A JSN and a bunch of new guys. So I think that first month, and we see now teams don't use their primary guys in the preseason a lot. So the preseason becomes week 1, week 2. I think our stances on Seattle are going to be maybe a lot different on October 1st than they are right now.
Yeah.
I will say, too, before we move on, I let all you guys say your piece there. Everyone seemed to be in agreement. Don't take both of them. I don't think that's actually a bad move. I think it's a bad move if you're not that confident in the rushing attack, if you're not that confident in the backup. But in this instance, and there's others like James Conner and Trey Benson, I would do the same thing. Where you get the backups, and we'll see if Charbonnet's price rises over the next week or two here.
I think it will. That's where I'm concerned.
But if it rises, don't you think Walker's will fall back a little bit then?
Potentially.
I think it could, right? So I am willing, actually, because these guys like Trey Benson go so late, I am willing to grab both backs. I don't think that is a terrible move.
If you are going to do that, double up in a backfield, you better be confident that there's not a third running back, not a mobile quarterback. I know Milrow maybe will play if Darnold gets hurt or something, but at least it looks like 2 guys, right? I mean, that's the thing, because a lot of teams, I say now that you can live with 2 in the world of backfield committees. When there's 3, you have to flee, right? You can't split the ball. You can't split the pie that many ways. So because it's going to be 60-40, 50-50, something like that, I think Justin at least presents a plausible case. I'm not going to do it, but your argument is reasonable.
Yeah, we're ethical gamers over here.
Ethical gamers. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, no, I really like both Seattle backs. I'm definitely one to just take one or the other. It is worth noting on Yahoo right now, their ADP in the last 7 days, both these guys are actually ticking up. Not much, it's a little bit more for Charbonnet than it is for Walker. He's just a couple of spots, but yeah, I do think this rushing ecosystem is going to be really good. And I think, again, Kenneth Walker's a guy I will take in the 4th round, no question. But we talked about this, Scott, where if somebody's going in the fourth round, and people are like, well, you worried about the injury history, you worried about Zach Charbonnet. You're worried about everything with every player outside of like maybe the first 3-4
There
picks.
are no safe picks in the fourth round because they wouldn't be fourth round picks.
They would be first round picks, correct. All right, Scotty, give us your first player that you think people should gamble on.
Yeah, so Justin Fields, no player in fantasy represents the gap between real life value and fantasy value, right? Because we're not sure if Justin Fields is a great quarterback, a great thrower. He has a huge sack problem, and sacks are usually more of a quarterback stat than they are an offensive line stat. But he goes to the Jets. Gerard Taylor's just there to back him up and maybe even coach him up a little bit. He's not going to steal the job. At least Fields has spent 2 years at Ohio State with Garrett Wilson, so they have some rapport. And it wasn't that long ago, 1,100 plus rushing yards in Chicago. He was quarterback 6 or 7, depending on your scoring system. So you have to divorce yourself from, look, Justin Fields isn't going to be an MVP. He's not going to throw for 4,500 yards. The Jets are going to want to try to win games 17-13, but it's not a surprise. Aaron Glenn could never stop Justin Fields when they were matched up Detroit and Chicago. So I wasn't surprised when Fields landed there. I'm still a Garrett Wilson guy. It's all about the algebra. It's all about the Konami code. If you believe in Justin Fields playing the whole season, if you believe in him challenging for 1,000 rushing yards, which I think is possible, goal line equity there, the combination with Wilson, there's going to be some games you're not going to watch, and then maybe he'll bail out in the fourth quarter. He'll run for a late touchdown, or he'll run proactively. It's, again, the gap between real life and fantasy life value has never been more stark than it is right now with Justin Fields. I'm totally confident. Now, here's the one thing I'll say, the caveat. You're going to draft Justin Fields. I want you to draft another quarterback and somebody you feel pretty good about. Maybe you pair him with Drake May. Maybe you pair him with Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. There's a lot of different guys. We all have different flavors we like at quarterback. But I'm going to draft a second quarterback if I have Fields. I'm not going to go one only with him. But they're not going to bench him. And he's going to run like crazy. And I think he'll make enough good plays with Wilson that top 12 is, I think, his reasonable outcome. And I could see him easily being a top 7, top 8 fantasy quarterback.
Charles, what do you think of Justin Fields? Because I don't think you and I have talked about him yet this offseason.
No, we haven't. But I had a similar conversation about fantasy value last week because someone told me, he's like, oh, Justin Fields is going to be like a top 8 quarterback. I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
He's going right now as the QB8 in Yahoo leagues right now.
I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like fantasy. I was like, okay. And then I actually had to look back at the production because, I'm not the biggest fantasy guy, but I do partake, even though I'm not very good. I shouldn't say I'm not the biggest fantasy guy because I play a ton of fantasy football, but I'm not the best.
Don't look at the hardware. Just look at the
look at the money I spend. I think what you saw from Justin Fields this preseason is probably going to be what the season is. First game, he's out there for one drive. They're pounding the ball. He makes some nice throws and then sprints in on a scramble for a touchdown. And then the next week, dude, it looked like he couldn't throw it from here to this computer without throwing it off target. And look, it's been 4 years now? That's just who he is at this point. But it's enough for the Jets to accomplish what they set out to do this year, which is just get a high enough baseline where the other guys have a chance to produce and at least show their talent. So I still expect Garrett Wilson to have a big year. I expect Braylon Allen to have a big year, partly because of Justin Fields. I think there's room for Breece Hall to have a big year if he can kind of get back to where he was early in his career. So it's like a 7-10 team probably that beats the crap out of some bad teams and plays tough against the big teams. But I don't think he's consistent enough as a passer for them to win, but he's going to rush for enough yards for you to win your fantasy games and rush for enough touchdowns. I mean, the one play that I'll never forget from Justin Fields' career, I think it was either his first or second year, because he didn't run all that much at Ohio State. And they're playing a game against the Vikings in Minnesota, and he pulls off, he boots left out of the pocket. He just bolts down the field for like a 75-yard touchdown. And I was like, I did not realize he was that fast. Like, that was like Michael Vick level speed.
And he's huge. He's a big
massive
guy.
Right. So there's only so low that someone like that can be if you can rush for 1,000 yards from quarterback. So, like, I think high floor, really, really high ceiling that you're probably never going to touch.
Boone, I want to throw this to you because I totally get the case for Justin Fields in fantasy, but as the 76th overall pick in Yahoo leagues, I just haven't ended up taking very much of him, mostly because I'm like structurally not building my quarterback rooms that way. So is he someone that you have like proactively drafted, or are you a little more skeptical?
It's not that I'm skeptical, because he's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback whenever he's gotten starting stints, whether it was Chicago, whether it was the beginning of last year in Pittsburgh. Right. It's going to be ugly, though, to watch. And Scotty kind of mentioned this. Like, You're
they
not
might
going to
not
want
be
to
a
watch
team
the
you want to
games.
watch.
Yeah, you're not going to want to watch the games, but the floor is going to be extremely high. The only thing to consider, I think, is that there are so many quarterbacks this year in that range for fantasy, from like QB 6 or 7 to QB 15 or 16. And would you rather have Fields, who this preseason, I think we've gotten some indications that maybe he's never going to hit that ceiling, like you're saying, right? Like he's going to put up decent fantasy stats, but is he ever really going to hit that like top 5 ceiling? At this point, I don't know that that's coming, where there's other guys, especially the sophomore QBs like the Drake Mays and Kaleb Williams and somebody else I'll throw in there like a JJ McCarthy, who I'm very high on. I think these guys could potentially have that kind of ceiling. Fields doesn't. So I've moved him down a little bit just because, like you're saying, I've found myself taking those other guys a little more interested in seeing what they can unlock versus Fields, who we've seen us for a few seasons, and low-end QB1 is probably what you're going to get, which if you were getting it cheap, great, but you're not really getting it that cheap.
Let me make this point that I'm not trying to talk anybody into Justin Fields because, as Justin said, the pool of quarterback is so deep. Pick your guy. It may be May. It may be Kaleb Williams. It may be J.J. McCarthy. I mentioned Penix earlier. It may be Brock Purdy, who's got a lot of things to work with in San Francisco. And I always compare the quarterback pool to the subway system in New York. You miss a train, another train's coming in 5 minutes. You don't have to sweat it. If you want to go Vandy quarterback, Allen Jackson, and Justin and I debated that about a week ago, that's fine. But there's right answers at every draft point. So if you didn't like Fields to begin with, I'm not here to twist your arm. Pick the guy that you like. Target the guys that you like, because you should be able to find 5 guys at reasonable cost that you can land.
Scott, one of the things I love about working with you is that when people, like the whole hive mind is in on something, you have no problem saying you're against it. And I come back to Anthony Richardson last year. You were one of the only voices of reason in the fantasy world. Your exact line. You have a lot of lines, by the way, that like stick with me. Yours was Anthony Richardson is a solution in search of a problem, I believe, where it's like, we don't need to take this guy in the damn 5th round. Like you said, there's another train coming, and Fields isn't quite in that range. But again, just for me, when I've been building teams, I have been a little more willing to wait. So, and the only thing I will say about the Field stuff, the one point I do disagree with you on is I do think there is some level of a benching risk here. Okay. Because if you're like 11 weeks into the season and you're not playing credible offense, Tyrod Taylor is a guy that can keep the ship afloat. He went in there in a game last year and threw a touchdown right away to Garrett Wilson when Garrett was a little irritated. So again, just, hey, we're trying to keep the train on the tracks. We're trying to build a credible situation here in year 1 with Aaron Glenn and these guys. But again, even if that happens, I think it would be really bad. I think it would have to be really bad.
And by then, you would have cut him anyway.
You would have cut him anyways. Yeah. And so again, that's the only thing I think from like if you're doing best ball drafts, stuff like that, there is some risk there. But for seasonal leagues, you can drop him, and hey, by then maybe Jackson Dart is starting. You just go to another New York quarterback if you really want to play that game for whatever reason. But yeah, Fields is an interesting player to discuss. Not so interesting is the New Orleans Saints offense. And yet, boys, for my first risky player to gamble on, I got a 3-pack for you right here. I think it's worth gambling on Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara where they go at ADP. And Charles is already looking like he wants to like
do you have a fever? Like,
I don't know what's in this. I don't know what I'm
confused here. You're saying identify the worst offense in football and stack them to the moon.
And get 3 pieces of it. 3. Yeah, you want to just get as much exposure to the 30 seconds.
Okay.
Is this redraft? We're talking redraft.
We're talking redraft here.
Oh, you're sick.
Is this the NFC South? Even in an NFC South only league, I wouldn't want to do this.
Okay, wait a second. Let me just
stop taping the show.
Let me just slow back down. Yeah, do you feel my forehead real quick? Am I coming down with something? But no, I think that I'm not saying all on one team. Let me be clear about that. I don't want you to get all 3 on one team, but separately, I think the reason that these 3 guys, or 2 of the 3 maybe, could work out for you this year is that, yes, this offense is not going to be good, correct. But I do think it's going to be well designed. I think Kellen Moore is a pretty good schemer in terms of getting guys in good positions, specifically in the passing game. And the best part about this is I know where the football is going. or at least where they're going to try to get it to go, right, is those three guys. They just traded for Devon Vele, which has to be one of the more bizarre trades I've ever seen.
I'm shocked he's not on your list here.
give me one more drink and maybe we'll get to Devon Vele, Jauan Johnson.
Once you have an IR slot to fill, you're going to pick up Vele.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, I think that, again, these three guys are that's another thing too. These guys are talented. Kamara last year was still very productive. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes in this offense. They're still out there like putting out rumors that they want to trade for another running back. So they're clearly not happy with Kendra Miller. They're clearly not happy with Devin Neal, what they've gotten so far. You brought this point up, Boone. They like tried to do the Cam Akers thing for a minute this offseason. Like when you're doing the Cam Akers thing, you're not happy with your backup running back. So this is going to be the Kamara show in the backfield. And in the passing game, I think it's going to go to these two guys. And these guys are good at football. Like Chris Olave, this is a guy people were taking in the second round last year. Now it's a depressed cost. You're getting him in like the 30s at the wide receiver position, in that range of the draft where I want to be taking wide receivers. I want to be taking shots on guys that are talented. And Shaheed, man, he goes deep into the 100s. And I think that their production could actually be pretty equal. I mean, honestly, of the three, the guy that I've taken most often has been Rashid Shaheed, because people view him as this shot player only, like just a deep guy, but he can run the in-breaking routes that are going to be critical for the move around player in this offense. So I don't know, like all three of you guys seem like you want to disagree with me on this. So Boone, because you're the most logical and you've been the nicest to me throughout this so far. I'm going to throw it to you first to respond.
We've known each other the shortest amount of time. That's why I'm still the nicest. I think when you factor in the cost on these guys, I have really no problem. I mean, we're giving you a hard time about this because it is the Saints, but when you look at where you can get these guys, like Kamara, back-to-back top 5
I'm sorry, was the
seasons.
segment not risky players to gamble on? Or
like,
what?
I mean, Chris Olave, you're getting him as your wide receiver 3 or even your flex potentially. Like, that's fine. I have no worries about that. Shaheed, you mentioned it. He's going so late that there's zero risk there, I feel. Kamara, I mean, I could see a scenario where now he's on the wrong side of 30, and if this team isn't going anywhere, is he going to continue to be out there week after week as like the main part of the offense? Maybe. I mean, is he somebody
that he will die in New Orleans on the field?
It's certainly possible. But yeah, I don't really have that much of an issue with where these guys are going. So it's fun to poke holes in it, but there's not really that much I have to say about it.
Just to save face for a second, let me just say the ADPs officially here. Chris Olave, 79th pick in drafts right now. Rashid Shaheed, like I said, deep into the 100s. So
What about Kamara?
I maybe flew a little close to the sun, including Kamara here. But anyways, yeah, Scotty, go ahead.
Boost your argument a little bit here.
Okay.
Because I think Shaheed is going to be, when I do my what's in my wallet, the guys I've drafted the most, Shaheed may be on that list because the price you mentioned, he was playing great football last year before he got hurt. And what did we see in the preseason? And I know, look, there's so little to take from the preseason. The main guys aren't in the field that much. They're expanding his route tree. They're giving him layup targets. They're finding ways. It used to be Shaheed, run the cardio and run deep and do the clear out stuff. And this year, I think he's going to catch, bubble screens. He's going to catch quick hitches. And I think Shaheed actually is the giveaway. The thing with Olave just needs to stay healthy. He's a dynamite talent. We've spent so much time talking about that great Ohio State receiver room. And they just, every year guys are coming out. And then, of course, they have an unbelievable prospect right now at Ohio State, Brian Hartline coaching those guys up. I just don't know how healthy Olave is going to be, and maybe he's even more quarterback tied to one of these guys actually being good. Would Archer Manning want to play in this team next year? I'm not sure. So Kamara, to me, is the hard pass. Olave, I would take if the cost was reasonable. I think Shaheed right now is actually a really nice player to target.
Okay, before I go insane, what's give me like a stat projection for like Rashid Shaheed?
I mean, for a guy that's going, again, at the 130th overall pick, like very, very much at the
yards, touchdowns.
I think he could be like an 850 and
crazy?
7 touchdown type guy. Wow, look at that. Projections right up there on the screen. I'll take the over on the yards.
I'm taking the under on all these.
No, come on.
I mean, are you some kind of like Spencer Rattler sicko or something? Like,
hey, Spencer Rattler can let it rip, baby. Haven't you heard he can spin it?
Just spent the 37th pick on a quarterback who can't start.
40th.
Okay, 40th pick over who can't start from a 4th round pick from last year. Like Tyler Shough is dead on arrival already. This offense is terrible. Okay, so I've watched Spencer Rattler.
This is a Falcons fan here speaking. He's compromised.
I watched this as someone who watched every drop back Spencer Rattler high last year. He's not very good.
Not very good. But Chris Olave did get 14 targets in that game with him.
Shaheed's 17 game average in the NFL is 802 yards.
Yeah, but he's never played with a quarterback consistently as bad as Spencer Rattler.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this: if you are an Olave guy, a Shaheed guy, a Kamara guy, which quarterback are we rooting for here?
Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers. I mean, there's to me, I look at this.
I'll take Archie Manning. Yeah, Cooper Manning. Any of the Mannings.
To me, there is no way, zero chance with a rookie offensive tackle. A guy who's flipping to the other side this year with Talise Fuaga. You've got guys coming back from injury on the offensive line. A rookie quarterback that's so bad he can't start over last year's 4th round pick. That guy's going to get. Rashee 700 yards, 800 yards.
Yeah,
they're gonna. Is this not just like the more?
They're gonna be playing. They're gonna be playing from behind a lot. Brandon Staley's defense not gonna be very good.
Sacks and interceptions.
I don't think anyone's told the Saints though that they're out of it because they're still making trades for receivers here.
Well, Mickey Loomis that's a separate problem.
We got a separate.
That's crazy. But I don't know. I sound like you guys are high right now.
Well, I do feel thoroughly bullied after that last one, so we need to take a quick break so I can recover my dignity after being thoroughly embarrassed on this show. But take at least one of these Saints guys. You don't got to take all 3 of them. Don't listen to Charles McDonald. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, hopefully my dignity will be intact. But if not, at least the show will go on right after this. All right, we are back. And is my dignity back? No. But we'll continue to move on with the show here. Charles, since you were so mean to me in the last segment, I'll let you go first because you won that debate. So who's a player that people should be gambling on this year?
Now, look, I'm going to preface this by saying, if you're an offensive player for the Bears, anything horrible can happen when you put the helmet on. It's just, that's what they do. But I think Kaleb Williams has a chance to really break out this year. Because I've been a little bit surprised, this summer, some of the conversation about like how down people seem to be on how he played last year. Because to me, I thought it kind of came out to be just an average rookie year for a quarterback that is the number one pick and build like that. We had 20 touchdowns, 6 picks, about 3,600 yards. I know the sack problem's there, but when you're looking at
super advanced metrics are really bad, but like the raw stats are
and I mean like there's enough there where you can still have like some reasonable hope like he hits that ceiling. And then that game against Buffalo this past weekend, I don't know, I kind of found myself like entranced with the steps that he had taken as a player, because all we heard, in the early part of the season or early part of training camp is, he doesn't look good, they look sloppy. And what I really think that was about is, no, they went from Matt Eberflus is someone who was like a rigid perfectionist in Ben Johnson in terms of how you approach the game, how things are going. So yeah, if you're one centimeter off, he might bark at you like you failed test and had to bring it home to your parents. But at the end of the day, it's going to make them better. And what I thought was so cool about the first preseason game was just like how precise they were on offense. Because last year it was just a mess. You know, Caleb's like drifting back there. People are freelancing on routes downfield. No one's blocking. But here, the second play of the game, when he hits that the three-step drop back out the gun and then boom, fires it down the field to Cole Kmet.
Yep.
The way it popped out his hand and like the confidence and decision making, and it kind of snowballed from there. Where even on like little short out routes, 1, 2, 3 out, and then when he's playing on time, that's when the physical talent really shines for him. And then Colson Loveland had a good game. I thought Ben Johnson called a good game. So I think it's a little risky because there were a lot of negative plays for him last year, or maybe not the high end positive plays that you wanted as consistently, but the ecosystem's there for you to at least try it and see if you can get all the talent that he still has. Because you just watch him make some of those throws. You watch him play on the run. Even the game that they played in London against Jacksonville last year, when Jackson was coming out in a bunch of two-man, he's like, well, I'm going to run. And he's fast enough to run. Just too much physical talent, I think, for him to really fail. And I'm in on him. Like, if I could get him, I don't know what his ADP is, but I know I'm trying to trade for him in dynasties like all over the place. So I'm in.
Scotty, we've talked a lot about the pass catchers and like the ball distribution here, but I feel like we haven't talked that much about Kaleb himself. Is he somebody that you feel comfortable with? Again, you don't have to bet on him as a QB1, but that he could get to that level of play.
Yeah, I'd want him as my second quarterback, as my upside second quarterback. And we've listed earlier some of the guys who fit that mold, like McCarthy and May, where you might not be starting them week one. I do think this might be a slow developing Polaroid. Brian Flores in Minnesota in week one. That's a Monday night. Then they get the Lions short turnaround. Now Detroit has their defense back after everybody was hurt last year. And not just Eberflus. I mean, Shane Waldron was just overmatched last year, and he set up Williams to fail. Williams never felt comfortable in that offense. So I think Ben Johnson fixes this team, and Kaleb get everything he wanted, right? New coach, new play designer, check. Offensive line upgrades, check. A dynamite tight end prospect, a dynamite wide receiver prospect. These are all guys coming in. I just think it's going to be a matter of when it pops. I think a lot of people might be rostering Williams, and they might not be playing him maybe till October. It may be a wait and see for it. But talk about a Heisman Trophy guy, a 101 pick in the NFL draft, who you just have to throw out, just like Trevor Lawrence was set up to fail with Urban Meyer, right? That situation was very similar in Chicago. So I think it's going to happen for Kaleb. You just might need to be patient with it.
Yeah, and after the coaching staff that was like swirling the drain last year, I guess we could put it, after they were out of the way and they made the change, he put up 3 top 12 weekly performances. Like, he was showing things that he wasn't showing earlier in the season. And that wasn't even the same kind of coaching upgrade that he's getting this year now. And I agree, it might take a little bit of time for all the pieces to gel. It hurt me in real life as a Bills fan. It hurt me watching them just crush the Bills like that. But as a fantasy player, man,
that was mostly like the Bills special teamers, to be fair.
It's also the starting defense based on last year.
And the depth of this offense. Cole Kmet could start for a lot of teams. He'll be on the field a lot. They have a lot of good receivers. I'm not sure if there's a winner in this running back room. And Charles mentioned Kaleb is mobile. I know he didn't have any rushing touchdowns last year, but he could run for maybe 350, 450 yards. So he's not a zero in that column. We like mobile quarterbacks. So
yeah,
Ben Johnson is the right answer. That's the bottom line. And Kaleb Williams eventually is going to be a right answer too.
The one area I still do get concerned about is the offensive line. It's better. Better doesn't always mean good, though, because they still have a huge problem at left tackle where they're trying to figure out who's going to play. Is it going to be, our former 5th round pick? Is it going to be a 2nd round pick? Is it going to be a 3rd round rookie?
It sounds like it's going to be Braxton Jones.
Right. Who was a 5th round pick a few years ago, which is kind of shaky for the guys they spent top 100 picks on in the past 2 drafts. The interior is a little confusing to me because there's name brand value there. Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, Drew Thalman, all guys who have been quality starters. But think about where they recently were. Drew Thalman got hurt last year, and his center, Ryan Newsel, came in. His backup, Ryan Newsel, came in at center. Falcons' offense didn't miss a beat. It was the exact same. Joe Thuney was all over the place last year, mostly because he had to play left tackle. So I think maybe he's a sure bet. But Jonah Jackson, the Rams flipped him for a 6th round pick after 1 year. So I think
they were ready to get rid of him.
They were ready to get rid of him. I think there's a little danger spot there. Darnell Wright at right tackle, really good player. So I think it's going to be better, but it could be inconsistent enough where they go up and down. But I still think that, later in the season, that could be a spot where they've figured stuff out, ironed it out, and they're productive offense.
Charles, do you have a lean towards like which pass catcher you think is going to thrive in this offense? Because I think that's a critical question.
I think it's O'Dunes.
Yeah.
I think it's O'Dunes.
Good answer.
Only because
good answer on this podcast.
I find it hard to believe that DJ Moore mentally, effort-wise, will have the same season that he did last year, but I still can't get it out of my head. Like the play against Arizona where he's just walking off the field in the middle of the play.
First route that I've charted in reception perception to the bench.
Right. I was like, I can't really get that out of my head, so I'm going to roll with O'Dunes.
And DJ Moore last year, like one of the weirdest, didn't even crack 1,000 yards, was right around 1,000 yards, despite the fact he got 98 balls. Like, that's insane that he wasn't even able to put up a good season on that. So, yeah, I also think it's O'Dunes. You bring in all this other target competition, which you mentioned. I just don't think it's going to happen for DJ Moore this year in terms of fantasy. And he's still going in a range that people seem to think it's going to happen for him. I've moved him down to like around wide receiver 30 in my rankings, and I have O'Dunes above him.
So let me ask you, how draftable are the two rookies here?
I feel so Colson Loveland, I do think is going to I think honestly both these guys are going to be slow developing pictures for sure, to use your term, Scott. But with Luther Burden, he's somebody that I think we have to figure out just how real this Olamide Zaccheaus thing is, because he's been getting a lot of pop from camp, and he was a featured player with the offense in that preseason game against the Bills. And he's a solid player. Yeah, that's the thing too. Fantasy players are like, who the hell is Olamide Zaccheaus? But he's been like a quality role player for the Eagles, for your Falcons.
He's like a back Hollis type, right? He gets in the way for fantasy, but real life team would love to have him.
Right, exactly. So that could be something that blocks Burden maybe all year, but at least like the first half of this year. And they're one of these teams that has a weird early bye too. But for Colson Loveland, I think this team, I don't remember if I said it on this show or if it was one of you. I mean, dude, I'm doing too many damn podcasts. But I definitely at some point said that I think last year the Raiders were number one in 12 personnel usage at like 34%. I think the Bears beat that number this year. I think they could be close to like 40%. So I do think both these guys will be on the field. Loveland's a guy you don't even have to take as your tight end one now at this point. You can do some kind of Jake Ferguson, Colson Loveland, like committee room at tight end. So I think they will be, but Burden is the guy that I would rather keep on waiver wire speed now than draft.
That's the thing. Here's the move with Burden. Someone else is going to draft him late. They're going to get totally disappointed because he's not doing much in the season. This happens with rookies, like deeper rookies, all the time, right? They'll drop him a month into the season. You go pick him up. You get that post, rookie bye week bump later in the year when they start to actually work him in.
Yeah. Brad Evans in 2014 dropped Mike Evans, and I scooped up Evans in the middle of October. Yes, I'm coasting on something that happened 11 years ago.
I was like, I love you taking a shot at Brad.
But I love himself. Yeah, we love Brad. He'd be a lot of fun time with Brad, and he's not
in
afraid.
This town in particular,
not afraid to throw his opinions out there. But I love that Justin Boone idea that some of these rookies let other people draft him. And then bye weeks kick in October. People have to cut players they don't want. They have losing records. They have injuries. Then that's when you really can pounce in. You never even invested in the guy. You got him for the price of the worst player on your team. And then the second half of the year, when often these rookies get a spike, you're the one who benefits.
All right, Boone, give us your second risky player to gamble on.
I'm interested to see what you guys are going to say about this one. All right, it's Rashee Rice for me. And there's just so many question marks around this one. I don't know how deep we want to get into the weeds of like explaining it all, but the 2 felony charges that were associated to that high-speed car accident, the assumed suspension that is coming. There was reports that the team thought it was going to be like 2 to 4 games. Then obviously we hear about this disciplinary hearing that's going to happen at the end of September. And then there's a report from Tom Pelissero suggesting that the league was looking for 10 plus games. More recently, Adam Schefter suggested that maybe that was actually closer to 8. He kind of went against the 10 plus.
It's a moving target here.
Right? Like, and shout out to Drew Davenport. We bring him up all the time. Football Guys does great work in terms of like the legal analysis around this stuff. He was the one that pointed out that Schefter interview. And it seemed like in that interview on the podcast that Schefter was suggesting that this might end up around 5 or 6 games. He said like closer to 6 probably. If you look at that and you say that's what's going to happen with Rashee Rice, I am still gladly taking him in the 50s, falling to the 6th round now. I will take him there all day long. You can win without your 6th round pick all year if you don't have your 6th round pick. If I'm only going to lose my 6th round pick for 6 weeks, I am more than willing to take him in that range. You look at what he's done over the last couple of years. I know last year at the start of the season, those 3 games, it's a small sample size, but boy, was he good early in the season, right? Averaged the 6th most targets per game, the 3rd most fantasy points per game during that short stretch. And it really looked like they were designing that pass game and that offense around him. Like he was taking over the role that like Travis Kelce had before as kind of the main pass catcher. He's that guy in my mind now. It depends what you feel about Xavier Worthy, and I'm sure that's going to come up here. But even the year before, over his final 10 games of his rookie season, Rice was a top 15 fantasy receiver. So he's shown that he can be in that wide receiver 1 fantasy range. I mean, you can pair him with other guys. There's so many good receivers like we've talked about. You could get maybe a Jordan Addison, right, who's going to be suspended early in the season. Not that I'm advocating go draft all the guys with suspension
team, okay.
But Jordan Addison's going a lot later than I think he should be. He won't be there for the first 3 weeks. If the disciplinary hearing is the way this goes for Rashee Rice and there isn't a deal made before the season, and I know it is a moving target, but you could pair him potentially with Addison. You could look at, I mean, it might be tough now to do it with Emeka Egbuka. I was doing that a lot earlier in the summer. Now Egbuka's price is really high. Brandon Ayuk's somebody who is going to be out and maybe will come around right around the time that Rice might get that suspension. So it's tricky because we don't know when the suspension is going to come down. If they wait until that disciplinary hearing, how long is it going to take for an actual ruling on it? And then if it ends up being 6, 7, 8 games, does that put us close to the fantasy playoffs? That is risky. But the other thing I want to bring up here, Nico Collins last year, he missed 5 full games. He missed the majority of 2 other games. He still topped 1,000 yards on the season. He scored 7 touchdowns on the season. And I normally don't do like year-long fantasy totals. I always want to do like average fantasy totals. And yet for this one, I think we still should because he missed so many games. Collins was the wide receiver 22 overall on the year, despite the fact that he basically missed 7 games. If that happens for Rashee Rice, you get him in the 6th round, I'm willing to do that. And maybe I'm overconfident because I feel like I'm going to be able to find somebody else in those weeks that he's not there. But to get a guy in the 6th round that could be a top 12 fantasy receiver, I'm doing that all day long.
Charles, what do you think?
I guess this is where my, coming from a more of a novice fantasy football player, I would just be scared that I could miss having him for crucial parts of the season. I like obviously on the skill talent alone, like he's worth more than I think a 6th round pick. But we start thinking about like, what if you're playing, because we've seen this in the NFL where guys are a little murky legal situation, but the season starts because it doesn't stop for anyone, and then all of a sudden the hammer comes down. What if you just it's week 4 and all of a sudden I don't have Rashee Rice anymore for 8 games? Was that worth it? I don't know. Because it's weird here because it's not about talent level. It's more about like trying to guess what is Roger Goodell gonna do here with the suspension. Because if he's on the field and he's healthy, I mean, this is one. He's the best receiver Patrick Mahomes has, and their offensive line should be better, so there should be better opportunities for him. But I don't know. If I just keep thinking if I was making a run for a playoffs and he got suspended, I would strangle someone.
And that's a possibility. What about the possibility that he plays the first month, they wait for the disciplinary hearing, so you get off to a hot start because you just got a top 12, top 15 receiver in the 6th round, and he's your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, just crushing in your lineup for you. Then you do lose him in the middle of the season, but you got off to that good start. You got a good record. And normally, as the year goes along, you're trying to trade for those high-end talents. He's coming back at some point. There is a chance that obviously it could be long and the decision might not come down for a few weeks after that hearing. That's a possibility. But I'm looking at it going, if he's there for the first 4 games, if he comes back for the fantasy playoffs, I'll figure it out in the middle. Yeah. Again, maybe it's hubris. Maybe I'm being foolish.
No. I'm saying I'm legitimately, I don't know. I
don't think anybody knows, but that's why he's risky.
Yeah, this is why it's a good one.
Scott, what do you think?
I think this speaks to your league setup. Justin talked about him being confident to make this work. There are certain formats I could see this being viable. Other formats, maybe not. If I did draft a Rashee Rice, I would not have any other player who fit that frame. I'll wait for it. He's going to be holding a roster spot up. Because remember, roster spots are important. You want fluidity with your roster. You want to be able to cut guys. You can pick up guys who emerged during the season. A couple of years ago, nobody saw Puka Nacua coming. He was top 10 wide receiver. So it depends. I think it's largely specific to how you feel on your own. What is your skill set? Where are you strong in fantasy? And in a certain league, I might be willing to do it. In another league, I might not think it fits my frame. I think Justin's maybe more confident in making it work than I will be. I'm not doubting the talent here. you mentioned, Rice was absolutely destroying it before he got hurt last year. So this is something where I think it's good advice in certain rooms and certain setups, and other setups, I think it might be a bad idea.
In one specific format too, in best ball, I've been grabbing Jalen Royal really late. He's looking great. The team seems to really like him. And I
very
think
similar skill set too.
They've been using him that way, right? So could he just step in? Hollywood Brown, who knows what's going on with him? He's been dealing with injuries. So I think that could be a scenario where you get him very late potentially as the fill-in as well.
Isn't it weird? Have we ever had the Chiefs had this uncertain a setup for offense going? I mean, this went to the Super Bowl again. I realized the Eagles beat them by about 120 points, I think they would have won that game 10 times out of 10. Philadelphia was just the best team in football last year. But usually we know where to hang our hat on with the Chiefs, and this year we really don't.
Yeah. The only thing that worries me about Rice, like this year, is one, like how healthy is he? I know the reports have all been good, but I always come back to the Tank Dell example from last year. Just, hey, he's been out there. He's been participating in training camp. You've seen those Instagram videos. He's running around. He's looking great. He gets out there on the field. He doesn't look like the same guy at all. Could that happen with Rashee Rice? Different players, but he is a guy that relies mostly on his size, speed advantage. And if that speed is compromised in the first 4 weeks, are you getting that same level of production that we saw before? Now they're just on the screen showing the Instagram videos, making me look like an idiot here.
Looks pretty good there.
Looks pretty damn good right there, huh? Well, that's not a real football game. The other thing that's concerning too is just what if Xavier Worthy takes that year 2 leap, and then that volume because a guy like Rice, that his air yards per target's like 5, 6. It's like that. He needs a lot of volume. So I think there are more gambles than just the suspension that you're taking here. But Boone's absolutely right that if it hits, not only are you going to crush September like we want you to do, Scott, you're also going to have just a guy in the back half of the year that could be a real big advantage too. So it's certainly, the risk is worth it, but it is a pretty big risk. Scott, I'm going to throw to you with a player from the cursed 49ers wide receiver room.
Right, yeah, the cursed wide receiver room of the Niners. So we don't know when Brandon Ayuk's coming back. Deebo Samuel's not coming back. He's on the Washington team now. Jauan Jennings calf injury, but when he played last year, right, that 12 for 175 in 3 game against the Rams, Bill James calls that signature significance. You have to be a special player to have that type of stat outlier. And look, Pearsall, year 2, we'll see if he takes a step up. We don't know when Brandon Ayuk is going to play. We know Jennings isn't thrilled about his contract, but he played at a low-end wide receiver 2, maybe even a high-end wide receiver 1 level when he was getting more than 70% of the snaps last year. 3 different games he was in the top 10 in wide receiver scoring that week, including the glorious number 1 wide receiver score against the Rams. I love his competitiveness. I love his play after the catch. I think he can win on a variety of routes. And because there's a lot of moving parts in this offense, I think he has a fair chance to lead this team in targets, catches, receptions. Remember, as great as George Kittle is, he gets like 98 targets a year. I'll never understand it. I think it's a mistake. I realize Kittle's a great offensive lineman, but there's going to be a right answer in this receiver room. And a lot of people might say it's Pearsall. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I thought Jauan Jennings looked like a potential star last year. I'm going to trust my eyes on that.
You're speaking my language. I've been waiting for this moment for years. Like I loved him. I've loved watching Jauan Jennings play. Like I remember our coworker Charles Robinson made fun of me because I kept starting him in the Dynasty League that we play, and I'm like, dude, one day he's going to break out. Then I got the Rams game last year.
Oh my God, right. So glorious.
I love watching him play, and for me, it's most like he blocks really hard. He does all the nerdy, gritty stuff.
That's why he got the contract in the first place, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
they loved his blocking.
Because you got to do that stuff to get on the field for a team that runs the ball as much as they do, and then you see him grow over the years and expand his game as a receiver. I'm really in it, especially on a team where someone's got to catch these passes. You know, it might look like one of those NBA teams where someone averages 23 points a game and you look back and you're like, maybe not the most efficient thing, but someone's got to put these shots up. And I think that he's going to be a big beneficiary of, Deebo being gone. Ayuk's looks like he's going to be, is he on the PUP list already? Because
don't draft Brandon Ayuk.
Right.
That's my advice on that.
Yeah, unless you have an IR spot.
Yeah,
right. Even then, you don't know what you're going to. He might need a year to come back.
Right, because he got hurt late in the season, and then
week 7 multi-ligament tear.
It doesn't seem like he's been making that great of a progress this offseason because he still hasn't really done anything. So this is the guy I think that's going to pop off. And even last year, when everyone was hurt, 49ers still had a good passing game for the good chunk of the season.
Oh, everything went wrong for them, and they were still a top 10 offense last year.
Right, because it felt like no matter who was in there, it was Ayuk, and then they put Pearsall in, and they figured something else out. That's the beauty of having Kyle Shanahan. So I love this pick.
Brock Purdy, #good.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Good enough.
Brock Purdy, by the way, is like impossible to get in Yahoo drafts because I don't know what the hell is going on our platform compared to every other place out there. Guy goes in, these are like ADPs in the 60s. I'm like, I want to take Brock Purdy, but I got to.
That's high.
It is very high.
That might be my fault.
That might be our fault, bro. I love Purdy too. I want to hear what you have to say about Jennings. Just my 2 cents. I'm a huge Pearsall guy. I think he is going to be the breakout player from this offense, but man, look at the rest of the room. There's still so much opportunity. And I know Jennings, you don't always want, I'm kind of surprised, Scott, that you threw him out there because he is currently injured and we're typically not trying to draft into the currently injured players, but I love his full field skill set. Great hands too. Like he's not the flashiest player. He's not super sexy, but in the hundreds, I'm willing to take him. So Boone, is it, what do you think on the 49ers receiver and Jennings specifically?
I really like him. Love the fact that his price has even come down too. At one point we were taking him like the 7th round. Now it's falling. It is a calf, right? That's the injury that he's dealing with.
Yes.
And I know nobody here is an injury expert, but
actually Charles is a doctor in his free
back
time.
Injuries, like you can talk to me about.
Is anyone worried about these calf injuries? Because we've seen a lot of pro athletes lately get calf injuries that then turn into ACL tears and other injuries. And that's one of the things with like Devon Achane right now that I'm kind of worried about, the kind of player that he is. Am I going to spend a 2nd round pick? Now it's totally different, like price wise, cost wise. You don't have to spend a 2nd round pick to get Jennings, but that's another one where initially I thought it was okay. It's more about the contract, right? He's sitting out like a lot of these guys, just, playing up the injury. And Kyle Shanahan kind of had some comments that made me think that was the case. But now he's injured, and I'm worried now that is he going to be ready for week 1 or not? That's the only spot where I'm concerned.
Yeah, again, the fact that he goes in the hundreds now, I do think that is like the risk is all the way baked in. So I'm not too concerned about it at this point. But it's definitely a situation worth monitoring. And hey, they just went on and traded for Sky Moore. So things are not going well for the San Francisco 49ers.
I cannot tell you how many notifications I got from Sleeper. Someone has added Sky Moore. I was like, why?
Listen, I love fantasy football players. I'm glad we get to do this as a job, but that is a sign that there's a true sickness.
Well, the
there.
great thing about adding Sky Moore is he's so easy to drop.
True.
Yeah.
So you gotta turn a roster spot every now and again. You just gotta spend some spare time, doing something on your phone. But we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, we have more risky players worth gambling on right after this. All right, we are back. We're continuing to talk through risky players that you should gamble on this year. And I'll start us off here. My second pick is Stefon Diggs, New England Patriots wide receiver. Typically, you don't want to be betting on guys in their 30s, coming off an ACL tear, changing teams. But if you're going to bet on somebody to beat the odds, why not Stefon Diggs? Because he's already an odds beater. This is a guy that was a former 5th round pick that has grown into at one point being an elite wide receiver in this league. And the reason that he has done that is because maniacal work ethic, true technician at the position. And I think last year was playing really good football before he got hurt. He was still over 70% success rate versus man and press and reception perception. That's part of the reason why I actually like that he's going to be playing outside for the Patriots instead of the slot. He played in the slot last year for the Texans because they needed a slot receiver. They went out and targeted Keenan Allen before trading for Stefon Diggs. So that was just a position they were trying to solve with a veteran presence. Didn't work out overall for the Texans offense. But again, I think Diggs in isolation still played pretty good football. So I don't totally know what he's going to look like now coming off that injury. But the last time we saw him, I think he was playing better than credited. And like, we want to find ways to get into this Patriots offense with Drake May likely breaking out in his second season. At the ADP for Diggs right now, which is, pretty cheap, 96th overall player in Yahoo leagues, I'm more than comfortable like thinking I can at least get a wide receiver 2 at that. Scotty, as the Patriots guy here, what do we think?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this team because, Mike Vrabel, right answer. Drake May kept his head above water last year when everything was failing him. And they did one of my favorite things, which is hire the offensive coordinator who failed as a head coach, right? Cliff Kingsbury did a lot of good things in Washington last year. Maybe we don't like him as a head coach. We like him as a coordinator. Josh McDaniels has been a failure. We're in Las Vegas right now. I mean, Josh McDaniels failed the Raiders.
I don't think he can come back into this.
I get it. He probably isn't welcome here, although I think I saw him at one of the 5-10 tables. But he can set up an offense. And he's going to have Stefon Diggs viable. And there's other guys in this team I want to draft. Pop Douglas, maybe. We talked about rookies in the second half of the year. Maybe Kyle Williams is one of those guys. Hunter Henry might be a valuable tight end. But Steph Diggs tied to McDaniels, tied to May. Remember, this is a team that won 4 games last year. Their win total is 8.5 right now. So there's a lot of helium on the Patriots. But you know what? Pump it in my veins, baby. I think the Patriots is the second best team in the AFC East. I think they have a chance to go to the playoffs. A lot of that's going to be May. I think a lot of that's going to be Steph Diggs.
Boone, I think you're the lowest of the 3 of us on Diggs right now.
So obviously the injury, talent-wise, no question. Coming back from the injury, I think is he one of those guys that we talked about earlier, who's going to come back, who looks great in practice film, but then is going to get out there and suffer an injury at some point, not make it through the whole season. I think there's a bigger concern with him at his age. But you brought up the win total. And as a Bills fan, I will tell you, Diggs wants to win. And if the Patriots don't actually make it happen this year, if they don't have that winning record, that's another thing I'm concerned about with him. Is he going to become a problem on that kind of team where it's not like it was with the Bills where they were ascending and going to the playoffs and becoming contenders when he got there? With the Patriots, if it's a slow burn and they're not quite in that area yet, I think that could be a bit of a worry.
Justin, they're the second best team in the division, though.
That is a low bar, brother.
Much, yeah. I don't know if that says as much about them as it does about the Dolphins and Jets.
Mike Vrabel constantly getting overachieving teams in Tennessee. I would be shocked if they didn't win at least 8 games. And I think they'll be in playoff contention in December. I'm going to stand by that.
Okay, wait. Not to totally derail the show here for a second, but dude, if they win like 6 or 7 games, that's a big improvement off what they were last year.
They're going to be in playoff. They're going to be in playoff contention while we're opening our Christmas presents. I'm telling you this right now. Right. Put it in bold print. Right. Whatever. I'll stand behind that. Mike Vrabel was the right man to get. I realized they made promises to Mayo, and they had to wait a year on that. And the defense is going to be good.
Well, we'll see. Charles, any thoughts on Diggs, Patriots offense? Any players you like from this crew here?
Only Stefon Diggs, I guess. Maybe one of the running backs. I
was going to say I almost thought about putting Travion Henderson in this exercise, not because like rookie running backs are generally not that risky of picks, but with the helium that guy's got in fantasy Twitter right now, he might be a damn 3rd round pick by the time.
Has anybody won the preseason the way Travion Henderson is?
Jackson Dart.
Those are the 2 guys.
Yeah, that's it.
I feel like the Travion Henderson stuff, especially. I feel like we're getting way ahead of ourselves because I look at this Patriots offensive line. They have 1 guy, Will Campbell, and 4 turnstiles. Like signing Garrett Bradbury is arguably a downgrade. I mean,
the Vikings could not wait to get rid of Garrett Bradbury.
He's arguably the worst starting center in football, and that is not good for a rookie quarterback itself. But again, going back to the basketball analogy earlier. Someone's got to catch these passes. It's not going to be Jalen Polk. So you're looking at Demario Douglas, Stefon Diggs is probably going to get a lot.
Kyle Williams is probably a guy. One of these later half of the rookie season.
Pop had 66 catches last year.
But
draft Pop Douglas, please.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player, but he might not be on the field all the time. That's the thing about Diggs. Like, he's going to be out there. He is a guy that does elevate quarterbacks. That's proven. As much as you Bills fans have a lot of scar tissue built up with the Stefon Diggs stuff, there's a reason that him and Allen ascended together, and I do think that, like, we might get a Diet Coke version of that with Stefon Diggs and Drake May here. I think that Diggs is the type of precise route runner that go back to Drake May's time at UNC working with Josh Downs. They're not quite the same player, but a guy that's where he's supposed to be, technically precise, wins the ball despite being a smaller player. So again, I think that you can take him as your third or wide receiver 39 right now, your fourth wide receiver potentially, and maybe get wide receiver 2 production. If not throughout the whole season, maybe a pocket of this.
I'm calling it right now. New England splits with the Bills.
Okay. I mean, they do that every year.
Remember all this. Anybody listening, you can slam me on social media if I'm wrong. I'm telling you.
Okay.
This is going to be. They're going to be this year.
At 4 verts, we'll be slamming you on social media.
I'm not even talking about the listeners and the Yahoo players. I'm talking about you 3 guys.
I know.
I promise you. I got no problem doing that.
Good. Thank you.
When they're 6 and 10, going into week 18.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be taking a week off that week, but I appreciate it.
Charles, your second risky player
this
here.
Is terrible.
You screwed the whole exercise up here. We've been yapping about Tucker Kraft nonstop on this show about why he's a great player. What's risky about Tucker Kraft?
Blame Colin, producer Colin. This is
fair enough. I'd happy to confuse me.
I guess there's no real risk.
The price is on the rise. He's going a lot higher than
you can talk about that because
that's a good point.
He's a Yahoo fantasy cover boy.
I think he does. I think he's. You always say it's the spirit animal. He might be the spirit animal of this podcast.
So how high do you think a tight end?
You could get him like 10th round. Now I think I see him going like the 8th round, especially in analyst drafts. He's going very early. I moved him up my rankings now. I have him as a top 6 tight end. I moved him ahead of Kelsey, ahead of Njoku, those guys. Very, very excited about him. The only question would be, are you willing to pay that price?
Now, this is Charles's guy, so I want Charles to actually say something about him. But I just want to say 2 very simple things about Kraft. One, if you could let me have the ADP board in front of me and say I could have one player at ADP at tight end on all my teams automatically. Just select him at that number. Yep. He's on my roster. It would be Tucker Kraft. The only thing I'm worried about is that since Devontae Adams left town, the high target count for anybody on a Packers team is Allen Lazard, 100.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
So I'm stealing his thunder. Let Charles, you have the floor.
Yeah, I was about to say the only thing that kind of concerns you, really, about I think all Packers skills players, sans Josh Jacobs, is they want Jordan Love to ideally be like a playmaking point guard. Like, you're going to dish it out to everybody. Everyone's going to touch the ball. We're going to try to get people into specialized roles for their skill set. I think what helps Tucker here is he can do a little bit of everything. One thing that I thought was a little surprising that translated from his North Dakota State stuff to the NFL was how well he was at screens and then catching the ball and running after the catch.
So good.
Because when you watch it against 1AA guys, okay, someone in the NFL is gonna be a lot faster, and it kept going. I guess the way I like to spread the ball out, maybe spending a 1st-round pick on a receiver, a running back is going to get a lot of carries. Those are some things you probably worry about. But if you're willing to pay the price, then this probably isn't all that risky, and I'll be better next time.
Nobody on this team got the 80 targets last year, right? But Charles mentioned Kraft's so dynamic in the screen game. And what happens when a screen pops, when they design it right? It's like a 35-yard play, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you know who led the Packers in targets last year?
I think it was Wicks.
It was Wicks.
Yeah.
I'm not even be on the field.
I'm repping the Packers today for a reason, right? But LaFleur may be the most underrated good coach in the NFL. And he likes to design touchdowns for Tucker Kraft, splash plays for Tucker Kraft, 14.1 yards per catch, healthy yards after contact. So don't take one of these catch and fall guys. Take a tight end who can actually make splash plays. If you get last season, ADP, you'll be worth it. And there's growth for a young player. And I don't care. They have other tight ends. Tucker Kraft's their number 1 tight end. So I think all 4 of us agree that if you get a few fantasy teams on Yahoo this year, make sure one of them is Tucker Kraft.
I'm making fun of Charles here for putting him in this. But honestly, a lot of people will respond when you talk about these Packers pass catchers. Well, aren't you worried about, nobody's going to be the target? Aren't you worried that this is an ambiguous situation? It's well, number one, again, the guy's got a 92nd overall ADP. There's something to worry about, maybe 5 things to worry about at everybody that's going in the 90s. But you need to draft into those ambiguous situations, because what if there's an injury that then clears it up? You know, I mean, Jaden Reed is banged up right now. And I also think you should be drafting Matthew Golden and Jaden Reed, not on the same teams, but take your shot on those guys late, because this is a good offense. Like, if you're taking a tight end in this range of the draft, you want them to be on the field all the time. Last year, Tucker Kraft was only behind Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and Travis Kelce in route participation. Those are the only 4 guys over 80% of their team's dropbacks. They ran a route. 10% touchdown rates. He's a proven touchdown scorer. As you mentioned, like, he doesn't even need to be in the red zone to score touchdowns because he's so good after the catch. And you want him on a good offense. And this is without question. Everything, not quite to the Niners level, but a lot went wrong for the Packers last year. Quarterback hurt, wide receivers can't catch. They were still a top 12 offense by every metric.
Ambiguous is a good word in fantasy, because if you get it right, Jacksonville's backfield is ambiguous. You get it right, it can be a home run. Green Bay's pass catching is ambiguous. You get the right guy, it can be a home run. When you hear ambiguous, people usually run away from that. No, say, if I get the right answer here, I've just made a huge profit and really increased my winning odds.
You mentioned Jacksonville. Boone, your third risky player plays for that particular organization.
Travis Hunter. I've heard everyone all summer talking about how much is he going to play on offense? Is it going to be a problem? Is he going to be more of a defensive player? And then more recently, we have Liam Cohen come out and say the expectation around 80% on offense. I think all signs right now are pointing to the fact that he is going to be primarily an offensive player and a part-time defensive player. Harmon, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you feel like he's a pretty good separator.
Yeah. Great wide receiver prospect.
Just an incredible athlete. One of these guys, and I know people say unicorn, people compare him. I'm not going to go out of my lane here and talk fantasy baseball. People compare him to like Shohei Ohtani coming into the MLB. Could Hunter come in and be that kind of player? And I also don't want to be like a tape bro too much here, but just watch him out there. Like, he moves different than everyone else. Like, he is so exciting. Fantasy is supposed to be fun. This guy is fun. And this offense, man, like, I love the fact that Liam Cohen putting him in the slot this preseason, right? 62.5% of the time, Hunter was in the slot in the preseason. He was super successful there in college. PFF ranked him 4th in slot yards per route run. That was among all FBS wideouts with at least 8 slot targets last year. And I will credit Derek Brown of Fantasy Pros is actually the one that put me onto that stat. So going to give Debro some credit there. And the fact that Hunter has been sitting out with this shoulder injury, I think might be the only thing that's holding his ADP where it is right now, because if he were out there and making all these plays, people would be so excited and he'd be on the rise.
I'm after one preseason game, I'm out on this 2-way thing. Pick one.
No, hey, let me correct you on that. You've been out
the whole
for a
time.
while.
The whole time, basically. But I'm watching him get, he's getting at the top of a route, and he's like 175 pounds. He's getting jacked around. And then he goes on defense, and he's not strong enough to bring guys on the ground on defense, like when they're bouncing out the runs towards the cornerback. So this is a guy that needs to get a lot physically stronger, I think, to take on like the rigors of the NFL, especially if you're going to play both ways. I think just from like a scientific standpoint, if you're playing both ways, you're not going to gain any weight. You're burning way too many calories.
Yeah, everybody says, well, he never gets tired,
Okay, fine, maybe he doesn't get tired, but he's getting run over, and he's already hurt. One game, he's already hurt, and that's Nate talked about this all summer. The fear of Travis Hunter is, he's a tall guy, he's an explosive guy, but he's small and he runs a lot. So he's never going to put on the weight with the workload that he has now. And I think that's a detriment to him on both sides of the ball. So just pick one, bro. Because if you're not going to be like an effective tackler and you're still trying to learn the ropes of the game as a wide receiver, I could see this rookie year being a little more bumpy maybe before he figures it out, because there's so much on his plate. But as it is, like splitting wide receiver DB, I don't think he could do it. I think it's too much. He's already gotten hurt without even getting to the preseason or getting to the regular season. Pick one and then specialize there.
It's so interesting to hear Charles say that, because you mentioned Ohtani, Justin, and I've been banging the table and saying Ohtani's so dominant at offense that even though he's a good pitcher, just it's not worth the risk, right? There's a guy who can hit 50 home runs, steal 50 bases. That's monstrously important in real life or fantasy. I would also like to see Hunter specialize in offense. Let me ask you this, though. If Justin, if you're going to be pro Hunter, how eager are you to draft Trevor Lawrence? We obviously all love Liam Cohen. Lawrence has had a top 10 quarterback season in fantasy before. Brenton Strange has some fans. There is talent in this backfield. Obviously, Brian Thomas is always open. How much of the Hunter optimism will spill over to Lawrence?
Not much. I mean, I think Lawrence will have a good season. I think Liam Cohen is great for him. This is more just a fantasy thing where, like we said earlier, there's so many good quarterbacks that I'm never picking from that range. If we're in super flex, sure, I'll take a shot on Lawrence as my QB2. But if you're just in a single quarterback league, you don't need to go that far down. And there's even other guys in that range like Bryce Young, who I think we've seen a little more from recently, maybe some more high-end games from him fantasy-wise, that I'll tend to go that way with it. The other thing I will say here, one other point, the beat writers have just been raving about him, and you don't want to rely on that too much because obviously beat writers aren't necessarily the best evaluators of talent, but like John Shipley in Jacksonville saying that
that's our guy.
Yeah,
our guy.
Hunter, just dazzling play after dazzling play, looks nearly impossible to cover in one-on-one drills. Now, that might be unfortunate for the Jags DBs. That might just be saying something about that defense as well.
There's a reason they still want him to play a little defense over there.
I also think that Travis is a game. He's a player that wide receivers and pass rushers, you should be kicking ass at camp. There's no pads on. Like if the other guy can't touch you, if the offensive line can't touch you, or the cornerback can't get his hands on you, you should win almost every single rep, especially if you're as athletic as him. So I'm not surprised he had a great camp. But what was alarming to me, like in the Steelers game, is that one of the catches he had is he gets the top of the route, he catches the ball, and then tries to make a move and gets ragdolled. Like he weighs 180 pounds. These guys can lift that with like one pinky. So it's just tough for me, like at his current frame, to imagine that he could survive a whole season playing both sides of the ball. Certainly think he's talented enough to be a great receiver or a great cornerback. But I forget who said it recently, but they made the point, okay, you're 100, it was the player. It might have been like Ryan Clark or someone like that. You're 175 pounds. You have to go tackle Derrick Henry and then go play offense, or tackle someone like Bijan Robinson and then get up, oh shit, my shoulder hurts, and then go out and run around and catch a ball. It's a bit much to me to see.
I think my outlook here, though, is that he is just going to be like that part-time playmaker on defense. They're not going to rely on him heavily on defense. Even the way they talk about it, to me, almost seems like they're just doing that because they know he wants to, and that they would probably like to have him on offense the whole time. Liam Cohen, an offensive guy. I think they drafted him to score touchdowns.
I do
right?
too.
Last thing on Hunter, because we got to get to a break here. I'm glad we had this discussion because, like, looking at the ADP right now, it is actually dropping. This is the time of the year where like the second overall pick would be getting a lot of pop, getting a lot of hype, and I'm glad we had that discussion because like there are people that are legit scared to draft him because of all these things. So I do think he's a very interesting player. And like if you like Charles's case, that's a little more negative. Like there's a path there. If you like Boone's, it's a little more positive. And I mean, look, people know how I feel about Travis Hunter. I think he can be a special wide receiver prospect in time, the more he plays there. But I think the usage in year one will be a little bit difficult to track. So you do have to accept some volatility with Hunter. But I think in the end, it's probably going to be worth it towards the back half of that rookie season. We got to take one last quick break. When we come back, Scott is going to tell us his third and final risky player to gamble on. And it's a shocking one to me, at least. Right after this. All right, we are back. 3 final players to talk through here that are risky, but we think are worth gambling on. Scott, I am surprised based on some of our more recent conversations that this is one of your picks here, but let it rip, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going with an old, boring player. Aaron Jones heads into an age 31 season with Minnesota, and everybody's so excited about Jordan Mason. They went after Jordan Mason. They prioritized Jordan Mason. They want him to be the 1B to the 1A with Jones. With Jones get a 2-year, $20 million contract. He's getting more money here. Had a great season last year as a receiver. He can play in all packages. He did get through 17 games last year. And even though I share Boone's optimism for J.J. McCarthy, and we obviously would follow Kevin O'Connell into a burning building at this point, I think Minnesota comes out a little conservative. They try to not overwhelm McCarthy. I think Aaron Jones, I can see like maybe 5 or 6 weeks into the season, people are like, how is Aaron Jones the running back 7? How did that happen? He's still a good football player. He's still more proven than Mason. He's still going to be the first guy in the field. He's going to be in hurry-up packages. Really, really good receiver. It's a case where I think the ADPs were wrong when they first came out, and Mason was the opportunity, but I think he's been scooped up so much and become a helium player in fantasy that now the boring pick, and I want ascending players. I want younger players. I don't want 30-something running backs generally, but I think the market is giving you a screaming value on Aaron Jones, and right now I'm going to take it.
Charles, I know we've talked a lot on Football 301 how excited we are about the investment they made in the interior offensive line. How do you feel about this?
I agree with everything Scott just said. Like I think this is a great spot for Aaron Jones to rebound, especially if J.J. McCarthy is, a top half of the league starter this year or can produce like one. I mean, the offensive line's fixed. If you go just like straight projected top 5s, you could make a case Minnesota has one of like the 3 best offensive lines in the league with the additions they made from, adding Ryan Kelly, Will Freeze from Indianapolis, and then drafting Donovan Jackson in the first round. And we already know Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, when they're healthy, are one of the best tackle duos in the league. So like this offensive line has nuclear potential. Aaron's still a good player. I still think he's solid. I think this could be like maybe like his last big year, but I still think the potential's there.
Do you think there's a chance that actually having Jordan Mason in there could make Aaron Jones a little bit better because he doesn't have to take some of those grinder carries?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's definitely, like when you're doing like the committee approach, you got 2 guys, that's probably doable. If there was like a 3rd guy here, I don't know. But Aaron Jones and
it's not Ty Chandler season.
No. But, and I think the Vikings, I think they could even be a little more run heavy this year than they were last year. Because it's not like, JJ doesn't have the experience of a Sam Darnold where Sam is shaky, you still probably trust him to drop back maybe 30 times in the game. But here, you probably want to play with a little more, a front runner approach. You're going to keep the ball on the ground, play action, which should work. And I think Aaron Jones will benefit off
And how many teams have committees anyway? 25, 26, right? There aren't that many bell cows.
If you can't handle a second running back in a backfield, like this game's not for you. You better go find a different hobby. I mean, we want you to keep playing on Yahoo Fantasy, but you might need to get a a different hobby.
Yahoo needlepoint. Yep.
Yes.
I don't want to be the guy that's going to talk ill of Aaron Jones.
Dude, go ahead, because
I've loved him for so long in fantasy, but I will say this. I like the approach of the value you're getting on him right now because he's dropped down, because people are so hyped about Mason. And early in the season, with Jordan Addison suspended, with Jalen Naylor out, there's been talk that maybe they could make a move to try to get Adam Thielen back. But right now, they don't have a ton of options outside of Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson. So yes, I think Aaron Jones is going to come out of the gate hot. Strategy-wise, if he does, trade him immediately. Awesome. You get a month into the season and he's putting up what you're talking about, like top 15, even top 20 RB stats. I would trade him and I'd get off of that.
I love that. Win September and then shape your roster in October.
Exactly. The injury list over the last 4 years with him, it's like a dozen injuries, most of them lower body. And now over 30 at his age. I think he turns 31 in December. Hey. Very, very scary.
Charles, you're in good company here.
I know.
All right. I'll throw out my final player here. And I think this is a guy we just haven't really talked all that much about. Marvin Harrison Jr., I do think is worth the risk here. And let me kind of explain my thought process. I've said this a lot, that third round at the wide receiver position, even early fourth, is not really a spot where I'm attacking the position often. I don't love the bets there. I think that it's a rather flat tier, and I don't think it's a big drop to the guys that Boone, we've said this all summer, rounds 5 to 8. That's a great range. There's so many good wide receivers there. But I have gotten a lot of feedback from people who listen to the shows. They're like, okay, well, sometimes I got to take someone there. Like, who is the right guy to pick? I think if you are going for someone there, I want to take someone that is young and ascending. And I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is obviously second-year player, still ascending. And it is a gamble, right? Because 3 things went wrong last year that contributed to a disappointing rookie season with the high expectations. Number one, it was Harrison himself. He's got to play a little bit better at the catch point, which I have faith that he can do that. He can put the work in and get better. The other two things have not changed. He's still in the same offense, is still the same offensive coordinator, and Kyler Murray is still the quarterback. And I am definitely hung up on the fact that where Marvin Harrison is best as a route runner to separator is running like deep over the middle routes, and like Kyler Murray just can't see and doesn't rip those throws. That is still, again, it's part of the risk. The other part, though, that I think will change is the deployment. I would be stunned if for 2 years in a row, Marvin Harrison Jr. is an outside on the line of scrimmage player for 80% of his snaps. Again, I know that the coaching staff hasn't changed. I would have loved for them to have added like a sacrificial X receiver to take some of those reps away from him, but I don't think these guys in Arizona are idiots. I don't think Drew Petzing is a dummy. I don't think Jonathan Gannon doesn't know football. I think they know that they need to change the deployment for him. So again, it's a risk, but if 2 of the 3 things can get fixed, I do think he can be a nice pick in the 3rd round. Scott, skeptical or no?
I just question, did Kyler Murray get any taller in the offseason?
Probably not.
He's trying.
Well, man, it's just so frustrating because you see Trey McBride get a million catches, can't get in the end zone. You see where are the layup targets for Marvin Harrison. This is a guy who came in with so much pedigree. Obviously, his father was a Hall of Famer. He goes to Ohio State where they have wide receivers. Jamison Williams had to leave Ohio State so he could play. That's how loaded their wide receiver room has been. But I just can't get past it on Kyler Murray. And maybe Justin or Charles can talk me into Kyler, but that's kept me away from drafting Harrison this year.
I like Kyler. I think he's a good player, but I'm not going to sit here and try and talk you.
He is what he is.
He's what he is, right. This is year 7 for Kyler Murray in the NFL. So I wouldn't expect his game to change at this point. So it's frustrating with Kyler because it feels so inconsistent. Like when you're watching it, and then you get to the end of the season. I know this isn't fancy stats, but you look at some of the stuff like the EPA success rate. He's always like a fringe top 10 guy, and I was like, where is the disconnect for me? Like when I'm watching it and what the production is.
His rushing stats go down in the second half every year.
This is a terrible take, but like he's kind of like Kirk Cousins in that way, where at the end of the year, the numbers always look the same and they look right around like 12th best quarterback in the NFL. But the journey to get to those numbers never like it was never consistent.
So
it was always very rocky. But
the Kyler destination isn't that bad, but the week to week destination living through it can be. We talked about maybe drafting Justin Fields and not watching him. There may be a little bit of that with Kyler too.
Yeah, no question. Again, Harrison's just such a good player. The talent's there. I would like to bet on him. But Charles, finish us off here. Who is your 3rd risky player worth betting on? Okay,
this one actually is risky, I think.
Yes, it is.
Kaleb Johnson, rookie running back from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I get torn on this. I have drafted him on almost every dynasty team that I have, just because I was in the later first round for most of them. So it felt like a good range. But
so this is like you're willing this into existence.
Kinda. No, I've liked watching him play for the past couple of years. And when we were doing our draft stuff, I said physically he kind of reminds me of Arian Foster the way he runs, because ours was a heavy outside zone team. He's taller, he's a glider back, and maybe not like the most agile guy like in between the tackles, but he's one of those guys where like the long strides can kind of help you burst through one of those holes like as they're breaking up on the stretch plays. The problem is, he's a rookie. It's tough. They play in a tough division. Like you play Baltimore twice a year, you play Cleveland twice a year. Maybe you can make that up with your 2 games against the Bengals because they look absolutely horrible. But the offensive line was banged up last year. They're young too, and those guys are coming back. So Troy Fautanu, who was their 1st round pick last year, got hurt. You had Zach Frazier, who was able to play, but other young guys were missing time. So it's going to take those guys a minute to gel. And then the idea that Aaron Rodgers is like the perfect quarterback for this outside zone scheme. Because I remember like watching the Falcons last year with Kirk Cousins and the team that they wanted to be, they had to go to like pistol because they couldn't get under center because Kirk wasn't fast enough to actually get out and get the ball to the running back on the handoff. So you just don't want to become so one-dimensional that teams know what you're doing. Because like with the Falcons last year, they're coming out with pistol. Like crowd the box because they're going to stretch it. If they're coming out in shotgun, well, we know Kirk's not going to hand it off, so drop back so they pass it. You don't want to end up in that spot. And I do think just the clash potential clashes, say, between Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith could end up hurting everyone on offense, including Kaleb Johnson. But I like the talent. I like the idea of the fit in Arthur Smith's offense, but there's just some question marks ahead of me.
Boone, I feel like Charles made a pretty good case to not draft Kaleb Johnson somewhere in there. So I definitely
but volume. We're going for the Colin Sexton's 20 points a game, 40% shooter scores.
I think people should just adjust their expectations. Week 1 is not going to be Kaleb Johnson's week. Kenneth Gainwell is still going to be involved. That's the way it seems right now. Jalen Warren's going to do his thing. As the season goes along, though, this is going to turn into what this backfield has always been. We're going to see Kaleb Johnson become the Najee Harris. We're going to see Warren doing Warren things. We're going to see Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers probably scrapping it out in the media. I totally agree with that. And
Mason Rudolph getting starts.
Based on where Caleb's going, there's going to be some value there for sure, but I don't think there's a ceiling. I think he's going to be more of like a low-end RB2 at best.
And also, Caleb's good at what Arthur Smith wants to call. Right. I mean, that's why they drafted him in the first place, that stylistic fit. So I think Justin's right that it could be another slow developing Polaroid. Be patient with him. Really try hard. If you draft Kaleb Johnson and you haven't gotten anything out of him in the first few weeks, I implore you not to drop him when the bye week kick in. But I still think the fantasy value is going to come around. It just might be an October story.
That's what I was thinking. I think he might end up being one of those guys that gets drafted and dropped just because it might not start off that hot. And, you mentioned the name Kenneth Gainwell. I do think Kenneth Gainwell strikes me as like an Arthur Smith type of, he's just going to be annoyingly involved. Jalen Warren's got his role, but I think there could be a moment for Johnson late in the year.
Yeah, I think the Jalen Warren aspect is, I think it's real because Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, like they don't really do the whole rookie thing, like where the guys are just going to be big factors as rookies. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're just like, well, Jalen, you know what you're doing. You go out there and get the first touches, and we'll see what happens. But I do like the talent. I just don't know if I love the situation for this year.
The Steelers a winning team again? Because Mike Tomlin famously...
I think this is their first year with a losing record. I said it on Football.
Tomlin finally loses it. Okay.
I think that's it. It's just too weird of a situation. Too many old guys on defense. So.
I was kind of
Aaron Rodgers' dark cloud.
Yeah. I was kind of with you until I watched that Bengals Commanders game. I don't know. It's really scary if you were a Cincy fan, like what that defense is.
That is a very fair point. There's a lot of question marks at the back half of that division, but no question marks for me. This has been a hell of a show. Appreciate you three guys doing this with me. Shout out to Homage for our great shirts here. I mean, Scott, you look fantastic. Charles, Boone, you guys all look great. You sounded great. We gave out great fantasy advice, and shout out to the Venetian, hell of a host here. And that is going to do it for today's show. On Monday, Ray Garvin joins me for the little ending of our cram week here on the podcast with a very special edition of the preseason Panic Meter. That's right, Panic Meter is back for another year. Who are the guys you're panicked most about heading into the season after off-season, training camp, preseason? A lot of new information here. Ray and I will fire off some tweets that you can reply to, but if you want to get featured in the show, the best way to do it, send us an email, fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. Voice memos are welcome. Videos are encouraged. But if you just want to write out your thoughts, your feelings, send it to that email and you will get yourself on the show. Be sure to get your submissions in, by the way, 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday as we go live, 5 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. Until then, we are out.